August 2010. London. Police officers enter a top-floor flat in a quiet street near the MI6 headquarters. Inside the bathroom, they find a large, red North Face sports bag sitting in the bathtub. The bag is locked from the outside with a padlock. When they unzip it, they find the naked body of 31-year-old Gareth Williams. There are no signs of a struggle, no DNA on the padlock, and no fingerprints on the rim of the bathtub. Gareth was a world-class codebreaker, a man who dealt with the world's most dangerous secrets, yet he ended up trapped in a bag he couldn't have locked himself. Let's go deep into the well. Gareth Williams was a man whose mind operated on a level most people could never understand. Born in a small town in Wales, he was a child prodigy who possessed a natural gift for mathematics and complex patterns. He was so advanced that he started his university education at the age of 13, graduating with honors before most people his age had even finished high school. This incredible intelligence quickly caught the attention of the British intelligence community. By his early 20s, Gareth was working at the government's Signals Intelligence Agency, where he became one of their most valuable codebreakers. His specialty was not just breaking ciphers, but also tracking the flow of money through international banking systems. Eventually, his talents were requested by MI6, the secret intelligence service, and he was moved to a high-security apartment in London to work on top-secret assignments. Gareth was known to be a deeply private person who lived a quiet and disciplined life. He rarely spoke about his work to his family, and even among his colleagues, he was seen as a man of few words. He was a cyclist and a fitness enthusiast who lived in Pimlico, an upscale neighborhood filled with government safe houses and surveillance. Despite his professional success, he told friends that he felt out of place in the aggressive culture of MI6 and was counting down the days until he could return to the peace of his former life in the countryside. He was just a few days away from finishing his London assignment when he suddenly vanished from the radar of everyone who knew him. For a full week after Gareth stopped showing up for work, no one at MI6 reported him missing. This silence from one of the most sophisticated security organizations in the world remains one of the most suspicious and unexplained parts of the entire case. It wasn't until August 23, 2010, that the police were finally asked to perform a welfare check at his apartment. When they entered the flat, they found a scene that looked both meticulously organized and deeply unsettling. The apartment was extremely hot because the heating had been turned up to the maximum level, even though it was the middle of a warm London summer. This heat had significantly accelerated the decomposition of Gareth's body, making it difficult for forensics to determine the exact time and cause of death. The investigators noticed that Gareth's personal belongings, including his mobile phone and several high-end watches, were laid out neatly on a table in the living room, as if they were being presented for an inspection. In the kitchen, there were no signs of a struggle and no evidence that anyone had forced their way into the high-security flat. The bathroom door was closed, and when they opened it, they saw the red sports bag sitting perfectly in the center of the bathtub. The bag was locked with a brass padlock from the outside. The scene was so strange that the first officers on the scene initially thought they were looking at some kind of bizarre training exercise or a staged prank. It was only when they saw the fluid leaking from the bag that they realized they were looking at a major crime scene. The forensic investigation that followed only made the mystery deeper and more impossible to solve. When the bag was finally opened, Gareth's body was found in a fetal position, but remarkably, there were no signs of trauma, no defensive wounds, and no bruises. The toxicology reports were equally frustrating because they found no traces of poison, drugs, or alcohol in his system. This lack of evidence led to a massive debate about how a person could be placed in such a position without being sedated or physically forced. The police brought in professional escapologists and circus performers to see if a human being could possibly lock themselves into that specific model of bag. After hundreds of attempts, the experts concluded that it was virtually impossible for Gareth to have zipped the bag, folded his arms inside, and snapped the padlock from the outside without leaving any marks on the tub or the bag itself. Even more chilling was the total absence of DNA. Despite Gareth being inside the bag, there was no DNA found on the padlock or the zipper. There were also no fingerprints on the edge of the bathtub, which would be necessary for anyone trying to stabilize themselves while climbing into a bag. It was as if the person who did this had the skills of a ghost, leaving a perfectly clean crime scene that defied every law of physics and forensic science. The bathroom had been wiped down with professional precision, leaving nothing for the investigators to work with. As the story began to dominate the headlines, a series of strange leaks from anonymous intelligence sources began to appear in the media. These stories seemed designed to portray Gareth's death as a tragic accident related to a secret life. The leaks claimed that Gareth had a private interest in escapology and bondage, suggesting that he had simply gotten stuck while practicing a solo game. They mentioned that investigators found women's clothing in his apartment and that he had visited certain websites that hinted at a double life. However, Gareth's family and his closest friends from Wales were outraged by these claims, stating that they were a smear campaign intended to destroy his reputation and protect MI6. They pointed out that Gareth was a world-class mathematician whose mind was focused on logic and that he would never have engaged in such a risky and illogical activity alone. They argued that the secret services were using their influence over the press to distract the public from the reality of a professional assassination. The apartment was a secure location with multiple locks and surveillance cameras nearby, yet the police claimed that no suspicious people were seen entering or leaving the building during the time Gareth died. This led many to believe that the perpetrator was someone who already had a key or knew exactly how to bypass the security systems of a government safe house. In 2012, an official inquest was held to provide a final answer to the mystery. The coroner, Fiona Wilcox, spent months reviewing the evidence and listening to testimony from police, intelligence officers, and forensic experts. Her final statement was a direct blow to the official police theory of an accident. She ruled that Gareth's death was likely a criminal act and that it was highly probable that another person was involved in the flat at the time of his death. She was openly critical of how MI6 had handled the case, especially the one-week delay in reporting him missing and the way certain evidence had been processed. The coroner pointed out that Gareth's work at the time involved investigating sensitive money laundering operations that were linked to organized crime and hostile foreign governments. This gave many dangerous people a powerful motive to see him eliminated. She noted that the lack of DNA on the padlock was a strong indicator that the scene had been professionally cleaned. The coroner's conclusion gave Gareth's family a temporary sense of justice, but it created a massive problem for the Metropolitan Police, who were still insisting that there was no evidence of a second person. This disagreement between the coroner and the police highlighted a deep divide in how the case was being perceived by different branches of the British government. Following the coroner's dramatic report, the police were forced to reopen the investigation, but the results were almost immediate and very disappointing. In 2013, less than a year after the coroner had ruled the death a criminal act, the Metropolitan Police officially closed the case again. They maintained their original stance that Gareth had most likely died alone as a result of an accident. They claimed that new DNA testing techniques had been used on the bag and the padlock and that they still found no evidence of a struggle or a second person. This decision was met with widespread disbelief and anger from the public. Retired intelligence officers began to speak out, explaining that agencies like the Russian SVR or the FSB have elite units dedicated to what they call wet work. These are professional assassins trained to kill in ways that look like natural causes, or bizarre accidents. They use untraceable paralyzing gases or poisons that disappear from the body within hours. A team of such professionals could have easily entered Gareth's flat, placed him in the bag, and cleaned the entire area so thoroughly that even the most advanced forensics would find nothing. The decision to close the case was seen by many as a cover-up, either to hide the incompetence of the security services or to avoid a major diplomatic crisis with a foreign power that had authorized the hit on British soil. A few years after the case was closed, a former KGB agent living in exile, Boris Karpachkov, came forward with a terrifying claim. He stated that Gareth Williams had been murdered by the Russian SVR. According to Karpachkov, the Russians had been trying to recruit Gareth as a double agent because of his access to GCHQ and MI6 secrets. Gareth had reportedly refused their advances, and when he threatened to report the contact to his superiors, the decision was made to eliminate him. The former agent explained that the Russians used a specialized nerve agent that left no trace in the body and then staged the scene in the bathroom to make it look like a bizarre personal accident that would discredit Gareth's reputation. While the British government never officially acknowledged this theory, it became the most widely accepted explanation among independent investigators. At the time of his death, Gareth was reportedly working on a secret project involving the movement of billions of dollars of Russian money through the London financial system. London had become a hub for oligarchs and spies, often referred to as Londongrad, and Gareth's work was a direct threat to the financial interests of some of the most powerful and ruthless people in the world. This connection provided a clear motive for a professional assassination that was designed to send a message while leaving no legal proof. The case of the spy in the bag has left a permanent mark on the history of British intelligence and the legal system. The safe house in Pimlico where Gareth died was eventually sold, and the red North Face bag became one of the most famous and haunting pieces of evidence in the archives of Scotland Yard. Gareth's parents have spent over a decade fighting for the truth, but they have been met with a wall of silence and classified files. Because Gareth worked at the highest level of national security, much of the information regarding his final assignments is protected by law and will likely never be released to the public. This lack of transparency has allowed the mystery to grow into a symbol of government secrecy. Many people believe that Gareth was sacrificed for a larger political or intelligence purpose, and that the truth was buried to protect the relationships between global powers. The failure of the police to provide a logical explanation for how a man could lock himself in a bag from the outside has made the investigation look either incompetent or deliberately misleading. For those who knew Gareth, he remains a brilliant young man who was let down by the very organizations he was trying to protect. Today, the mystery of Gareth Williams is discussed in forensic science and intelligence courses as a prime example of the perfect crime. It is a case where logic and reality seem to stop at the door of the bathroom. The image of the red bag sitting in the bathtub is a reminder that in the world of espionage, the truth is often hidden behind layers of deception. Whether it was a professional hit carried out by a foreign state or a series of impossible coincidences, the result was the death of one of the most talented minds of his generation. Gareth's life was spent solving the world's most difficult codes, but his own death became a code that no one has been able to break. The silence that surrounds the case today is just as heavy as it was in 2010. The official files are closed, but for the rest of the world, the story remains open and deeply disturbing. It is a reminder that some secrets are so dangerous that they can never be allowed to come to light, even if it means leaving a family without answers and a killer without justice. Gareth Williams remains the spy who was found in a bag, a genius who was silenced in a way that remains a challenge to the world's sense of reality. The official files may be closed, but the world knows that a man doesn't lock himself in a bag and disappear without a reason. Subscribe, ring the bell, and thanks for watching. Don't forget. I'll see you at the bottom of the well.